Welcome, everybody, to Body Ecology Living. I am so excited about our conversation that we're going to be having today because I have admired Dr. Isaac Elias for oh my gosh, 6, 7 years. My friend Hyla Cass, Dr. Hyla Cass, told me about him, and she gave me this amazing product that we're going to talk about. And in the beginning, I didn't really understand what it was. And then I heard a podcast, FX Medicine, which is a great podcast if you want a good one to listen to. And then, so I started using the Pectisol, actually using it, and saw lots and lots of changes. And then I started understanding the science behind it. It's a little complicated, at least I thought so at first, because I'd never heard of this molecule that we're going to be talking about today, this protein. And I thought, if nobody's ever heard about it, how significant can it be? But it is extremely significant. And today, Dr. Elias is going to go into this molecule. It's a life-changing conversation. You'll see as we get to the end why you'll be very glad that you listened and also know about his work and know about his product and his book. He has a brand new book. I have it right here. It's called The Survival Paradox. I always wonder if it shows up the letters going in the right way, but it's called The Survival Paradox. And it's great that he has this book out because finally people can understand about this incredibly important, his work and the molecule and that we're going to talk about. And also just right now with all the crazy stuff happening in the world, not only what it means, the survival paradox, but also what to do to survive through this time and make it through safely. So, Dr. Elias, thank you so much for being on. I'm very, very honored that you said you do this podcast.
Thank you, Donna. I'm looking forward to this interview. And, we are admirers of your work. We've been using the body ecology for almost 2 decades. I think we started like in 2006, and it changed and transformed the health of my own family members. I've recommended it to dozens and dozens of cancer patients. And the reason, it's not the details are amazing, it's the wisdom. The wisdom of understanding the respect and the dialogue between the microbiome and us, and how when we respect each other and we treat our gut well and we treat our being well, we get a better microbiome, we get a better being, and we actually get a better world. Because this relationship, as the book talks about, the microbiome and us, it's just an inner relationship. It's us and people who we don't agree with. It's different nations in Earth. It's Earth in the solar system. These relationships keep going on, and we have a chance to exercise them inside our own body. And that's why your work is so important. And that's why the survival paradox is truly a paradigm shift. I worked on it for years. It's really a culmination of decades of insight, 10 years doing a half-day meditation retreat, 20 years going to the mountains for 2 months a year, studying, Tibetan Buddhism and meditation for decades by being a researcher, being a clinician, being a healer. And then it got simplified. And as I wrote it and put the energy into it, I said, okay, I was ready to write a book. Finally, I'm in my early 60s. But the feedback is, is people are just saying, it changed my life. It changed my life. And I think it really resonates with your work and your approach. So I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Oh, great. Well, so Hyla told me about your work. And when I listened to the podcast, the FX Medicine podcast, you mentioned you were going to be writing a book. And I thought, great, this is really good because I don't even know if any doctors, even functional medicine doctors, know about this molecule that we're going to talk about. But when you said that it was called the survival paradox, I was completely puzzled. Like I thought, what does that mean, the survival paradox? Now, of course, I read the book and listened to that podcast at least 6 times, but which you kind of have to, because every time I listen to it, I get another important piece of information. But the thing is, the survival paradox is like something that is, we can't avoid it. It's absolutely part of our life, and yet it's saving our life and at the same time killing us and aging us quickly and making us really sick. So can we start there? Could you explain what does it mean, the survival paradox?
Of course, of course. So, taking a step back, integrative medicine approaches, functional medicine recognizes the inflammatory process as driving every chronic disease and acute diseases like COVID, like sepsis, and chronic diseases. And I think that Western medicine has embraced it now with the cytokine storm and with understanding the importance. But is inflammation really the cause? And the answer is no. Inflammation is a result. And what drives inflammation, and that's the paradigm shift, is a survival paradox. The same drive that makes us survive is what causes us to get sick, affects every acute and chronic disease without exception. There are close to 9,000 papers on galectin-3. There are 75 published papers on pectin, modified citrus pectin, the galectin-3 blocker. But if you look at them, they are in so many different areas, in oncological support, in kidney health, in heart health, in liver health, in autoimmunity, in microbiome health. Why? Because of this fundamental process. So what is a survival paradox? We are innately built to survive. Donna, it's built in us. So if it's built in us, we can't control it. So how does it work? Well, our immediate effect within a fraction of a second is our autonomic nervous system, our sympathetic system. Fight or flight. We either fight or we run away or we hide. We put a shelter. And then we got the parasympathetic system that balances it out. And if we find time to relax during the day and take a deep breath, it will balance it out. If we are in a sympathetic flow, we know it damages our health. But then there is a biochemical response. And the biochemical response is triggered by our survival protein, galectin-3. And galectin-3, as a survival protein, helps us survive embryonally when we are in the womb. It helps organs and cells to mature in a healthy way. For example, kidneys need a galectin-3. But when we're already alive and functioning, galectin-3 serves us for injury repair, injury from stress, from traumas, from infections, from an array of issues. How does it do it? By producing inflammation and fibrosis, hardening of the tissue, which makes the organ dysfunction. And it truly drives aging. Galectin-3 drives our aging process. So if we can block its harmful effect, it's going to change our health. But when we look at the survival paradox on a physical, biological level, on a molecule level, yes, I developed the first galectin-3 blocker, modified citrus pectin. Interesting.
It's called Pectisol, by the way.
Right.
And there are other companies out there that have citrus pectin or modified. Is theirs considered modified or just the Pectisol?
It's actually a great comment. People really need to use Pectisol because it's called borrowed science. They take your science and then they put out another. I mean, you know it well with your work, right? We were ordering your cultures. It's like it's the same. So definitely. But I was just getting today a WhatsApp from the oncologist who did the multi-center trial in biochemical relapse of prostate cancer with 78% response. He said, Isaac, he told me, he wrote me, life, we all have our time on earth, but you were willing to swim against the current and you really made a difference in medicine. And this is something that you own. And of course, I thanked him for helping with the study. But yes, it's really recognizing that the survival paradox needs to be addressed, can affect us in so many levels. So on a physical level, we have Pectisol, but we have to address it emotionally, mentally, psychologically, psychospiritually, and we are built to do it. And the book takes us through the journey of understanding what is the survival paradox, who is the architect of survival paradox, galectin-3, what kind of effects it has on us, the damage, how it operates metabolically, very relevant to infections and to biofilm and to Lyme and to Candida, like in areas that you are interested. And then it tells us how to block it, but then it gives us the real key to transformation. And this is connecting with our heart. the heart of survival.
Well, there's so much to unpack here. So let's just start with this molecule that no one's heard about, galectin-3. And also it's galectin, and it's got the word lectin in it. Is it a lectin?
Absolutely. Some people have borrowed my galectin-3 work, and you know, the whole lectin is not a new thing. Galectin is the most important lectin. It's the most researched lectin. And it drives inflammation. That's its job. Its one job is to create an immune response, to create inflammation. And we know now what the cytokine storm does. It kills people, right? Mm-hmm. So what it does, galectin-3 is the most researched one, is a carbohydrate, a sugar, not glucose, but sugar in general, a carbohydrate binding protein. So it has this kind of a structure, and the different carbohydrate binds here. So you get oligosaccharides, glycoproteins, glycolipids, you get all the oxidized lipids. And then what it does, so different growth factors, different inflammatory factors, different damaging factors bind, and then it creates a pentamer. It creates 5 of them. And the 5 will attach to other 5, and it will create a pentamer, a coating, a lattice formation that is the backbone of the arteriosclerotic plaque. That is a way that cancer hides, but it's also the backbone of the biofilm that allows bacteria to hide, and viruses to hide, and candida to hide. And when we block it with modified cytospectin, it breaks apart, and now the body can respond. Because what happens if we look, and over in the book, of course, I cover it, if you introduce galectin-3 to immune cells, they shut down, they stop functioning. Why? Because this lattice formation is covering the immune cells, and they no longer communicate with the surrounding. When we put a galectin-3 blocker, they start functioning again. So this is a very important concept of the survival paradox and understanding the role of galectin-3. And later on, we'll talk about this concept of survival, because we are not the only ones who want to survive. Our microbiome wants to survive, So if we are aggressive, if we are aggressive with our microbiome, if we insult it, we take antibiotics when it's not necessary or on the wrong diet, the microbiome will respond with vengeance, and that's when we get the side effects. So it's about creating an harmony, and we are built to do it. And I'll talk a little bit later about the role of the heart. That's really the big.
Well, would you explain again a little bit more about the immune system? I kind of missed that. I'm afraid other people might have missed it too.
Yes, definitely. It's a very important topic. So let's step back and talk about the survival paradox. So we want to survive. Now, if we look at our body, Donna, we have, I don't know why they say 37.5 trillion cells. Let's round it to 50 trillion cells. So 50 trillion is 1,000, times 1,000 is million, times 1,000 is trillion. We have 50 trillion cells. Each cell in our body has up to 1 million reactions. So it's a miracle that we are alive and we are talking with so many reactions in this body. So we all support each other. Each cell supports each other, and that's the interdependence between cells. Okay. And then when a cell decides that, and the cell knows it comes into play, and then its life ends, and it goes through normal apoptosis, it just dissipates away, and a new cell comes. But when a cell doesn't want to die, it says, I don't want to die. It's holding, it's fixation. It's a basic, actually, mental concept also. It feels that it has an imbalanced survival drive, survival paradox. Now it doesn't want to die. How does it do it? It creates a coating around it, and it creates an isolated environment, and it starts duplicating and starts being aggressive to the environment. How do we call it? We call it cancer. So what cancer does, it utilizes galectin-3 to shut down the immune response. Amazing.
Wow. So okay, now I understand what you were saying, because that's really, really important what you just said.
It's very important. It's critical because we know that cancer patients getting immunotherapy PD-L1 inhibitors like Keytruda, they're now very popular and has some benefits, a lot of benefits sometimes. If their galectin-3 levels are elevated, they will not respond to the PD-L1. They will not respond to immunotherapy. Why? Because the immune system is suppressed and the cancer is hiding. So
this is the biggest problem with treating cancer. Is it's hiding, and you can't really reach it even with the strongest and most powerful drugs and all.
Exactly.
So you're saying, just to make sure that everybody gets this, you're saying that if you lower galectin-3, the immune system can come out and do its job basically, and that cancer cell can't become really dangerous, kill you.
And it's not that I'm saying, if we look at the study that was just published in Nutrient, which is a high impact peer-reviewed journal, multi-center trial, 6 hospitals, our third trial, 60 patients, the large trial. So what is biochemical relapse of prostate cancer? You remove the prostate either with surgery, with radiation, and the cancer starts coming back. Now, the PSA is going up, it reflects the cancer coming back. What do? We give modified cytospectin. The modified cytospectin, our modified cytospectin doesn't kill the cancer. It creates the environment for our immune system to deal with the cancer, where it's not a hormonal therapy like other drugs and supplements, that are phytoestrogen, because that's a double-edged sword. It allows the body to address the cancer. And what do we see? 78% response. That's the same principle that we are showing in so many conditions. And in the book, I'm explaining it, but there is, on one level, there is such a simple solution. This is why I feel that using modified cytospectin is the most important supplement you can use, because it's tied to aging and to every health issue, without exception.
And in the book, you've got some amazing stories, which are always great to read. The people that came to you were literally on death's door. They shouldn't be alive today, and they survived long, long years, much longer than they should have ever survived. And I know you did other things besides the modified cytospectin, but that was critical. And as I began to understand more of how it worked, I could see why it was doing that, so that other treatments, acupuncture, the mushrooms, and so on, would help them. It's like the modified cytospectin has to be the first step. It has to
it's part
calm
of
things down.
It's always a part of the package. Yeah, exactly.
So, I think, I know you probably should have brought this book out before and this knowledge into the world, but, sometimes people aren't ready to hear it. We certainly know a lot about cancer today, but most of all, thanks to Dr. Gundry's book, a lot of people know what lectins are, so that's a little bit easier to understand. But also, I think a lot of people are learning, they learned about the cytokine storm that couldn't be brought under control, that took a lot of people out. And since the whole issue is still going on, I think that there could never be a more important time than right now for people to learn about modified cytospectin and about the galectin. I guess I'm not saying it right, but that this is an enemy, and that as it increases, even like one of the things I found says, so after I'd learned something, I'd go do research, and I'd learn more about fibrosis, for example. And then I looked and I saw a lot of information on, research now on the lungs and heart, that when people have the COVID-19 virus or they develop COVID-19 and then sometimes very seriously and, into the hospital, they end up with after effects. And so I'd love to spend some time talking about this subject. Because I think it's going to save lives. And all these long haulers out there, that have these post-virus symptoms, this is the answer. So they must be on that, in my opinion.
I want to tell you, it's probably the most important thing we can focus on today with what's going on. Mm-hmm. So, and it's the data is remarkable. So galectin-3 drives the survival, drives the cytokine storm. I really want people to understand. Galectin-3 starts it. I published, a part of a group, 2 landmark papers in the last year. year and a half, okay?
Mhm.
Both of them are on what we call acute kidney injury, a damage to the kidneys that then will lead to organ failure and to death. Okay. For example, 40% of COVID patients that come to the hospital have AKI, acute kidney injury, and 50% of them will die. 50%. So we showed that if you block galectin-3 using our modified cytospectin before we create sepsis in the animal models, we prevent the rise in interleukin-6. We attenuate the cytokine storm, we reduce the acute kidney injury, and we reduce dramatically the death of the animals. We showed the same when we have perfusion injury, when blood is not coming, what happened in COVID with hyperviscosity. And we show that in the intensive care unit, patients coming with sepsis without pre-existing conditions, their level of galectin-3 at time of admission will determine who is going to die. And
Who tests that? Who would know? Well, first of all, people need to know they can test
they can, but they
galactin-3
don't
levels.
because of the
And
trials.
do they? Does anybody know to test for that?
No, because it's a lot of politics on what gets attention, right? What gets studied. So here is a really important thing about COVID. Remember the survival paradox and what I said. Everybody wants to survive. COVID wants to survive. The highest density of galectin-3 receptors, where galectin-3 can attach, is in the lungs. The spike protein of the COVID is practically identical to galectin-3.
Oh, wow. But the ACE2 receptor is also in the gut and the kidneys. It's in critical places.
Of course. But the other part of the spike protein is literally identical to galectin-3. So you got something that will reduce the inflammation and can also bind to the spike protein. So you have studies, large study done in Mexico City on looked at patients coming to the ER, just with COVID, okay? Regardless of the level of involvement of the lungs at the time of admission. The level of galectin-3 determine who later on will end in the ICU and who will die. The levels of galectin-3 at time of admission. So you're right, modified cytospectin at 15 grams a day is a must, and it can be used with other treatments. And because it's synergistic, we have shown our modified cytospectin to be synergistic in cancer with radiation therapy, with multiple chemotherapies, with hormonal therapies. It's not about one or the other. It's about addressing these issues. And in this sense, a lot of my friends say, Isaac, what your work is like the best kept secret in town. You're too busy just researching.
I feel that way. Absolutely.
You got to put the word out. And it's not that I'm shy. I know how to speak, as you can, I know. I just have to put more energy. And the survival paradox really opens the door for people to understand the profundity of it. And I tell you one simple thing, take Pectasol right now. It's insane not to, because if we can block and attenuate the cytokine storm, we are, it's like an insurance policy.
So I would like to just have some clarity on this. So you need the innate immune system that kicks in when the virus enters the body, is necessary. So that's a good thing. Right. And yet what we don't want happening is for that runaway, the immune system become out of control. And could you speak to that so people just have a better picture?
Yes, of course. It would have been incredible if our immune system could respond and then relax. It doesn't. It gets stuck in a hyperinflammatory state. It doesn't shut down. And that's when the cytokine storm starts, when we get an inappropriate immune response. Because here is the interesting thing. For B cells, so there are two kinds of lymphocyte immune cells. There are T cells for cellular immunity, and there are B cells. B cells need to mature into plasma cells to produce antibodies. Galectin-3 blocks the ability of B cells to become plasma cells. So I have cases of patients, let's say someone who had a serious side effect after a vaccine, okay? And months later, they have inflammatory symptoms and they have no antibodies. And I give them modified citrus pectin and a few more things to support. And the symptoms get better. And suddenly they are showing antibodies. Months
Oh,
after.
wow.
Yes. Why?
So they didn't have antibodies after the vaccine,
Right.
or very, very low levels.
Right.
They start on the modified citrus pectin, and
Suddenly
then
they have antibodies. And now this is very fascinating. Again,
very.
I need to confirm, but we understand why it's doing it. It's allowing the B cells to transform into plasma cells while it's allowing us to have a normal T cell response, but it's lowering the hyperinflammation. It's also lowering the mast cell, excretion of different allergens. So it's lowering. Galectin-3 also drives allergic responses. If you look at autoimmune diseases, the patient with autoimmune disease has a very high level of galectin-3. Why is all of this? There are two ways of looking at medicine and health. It's chasing the symptoms, which you can do with conventional medicine, and you can also do with integrated medicine. I treat this enzyme, or you can step back and say, let's try to have a bigger understanding, right? Don't I know? When let's look at the body ecology, okay? When our body ecology improves, like with your approach, everything improves, right? The energy is better, the urinary system is better, the OBGYN,
You think better,
the brain
you
is
are
better,
happier.
the gut brain. Why? You didn't treat the brain, you just supported the person.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to remember, modified citrus pectin is food. It's made from the peel of the citrus fruit. It's a great story I tell in the book. I grew up in Israel, and my neighbor Leo and Ruth Cohen, that are no longer alive, they were the pioneers in the citrus industry in Israel. They were PhDs in organic chemistry. I remember 1971, we took a walk to their house, and Ruth turns out of the blue, I'm 12 years old, tells me, Isaac, one day they will find a cure for cancer from the peel of the citrus fruit. No idea why she told me, but I remembered it. 24 years later, when the first research came out in 95, I called her from San Francisco. Said, Ruth, it's Isaac. Yeah, how are you doing? I told her, you won't believe. I remember what you told me. I need your help.
Wow.
And that's how my journey started with modified citrus pectin. And, nobody imagined how big it's going to be. The focus was on oncology. But then I started seeing people's memory getting better, joint pains getting better, blood pressure. And I said, this is harmonizing fibrosis and inflammation. And I found that it's removing heavy metals. We have many papers.
That's huge right there.
And we actually
people just take it as a detox for heavy metals. That's huge.
These are not speculation. We have, I think, 3 or 4 published papers. Everything we do is supported by science, by research. That's why I don't have enough time to go around and talk. But now I've made it a commitment to put the message out and use the importance of galectin-3 to allow people to move from survival to healing and harmony, because we are built to do it. Our body is built to do it. We just have to connect with this ability.
Well, maybe that's the ultimate purpose of this worldwide pandemic. It's got people doing a lot of reflecting and realizing what's important. And when they get over this and they realize, there's a way to heal, a way to get past this, it'll ultimately be a better world, a kinder world, I think too. So again, the timing is perfect, even though you probably could have done it earlier. Now, I have a question about the B cells. So in order for them to start creating antibodies, which is their job, and there aren't any antibodies, so are they hanging around after the person's gotten over what feels like their infection? They're still. How are they able to create antibodies later down the road? Are the B cells still hanging around, waiting there?
So B cells, plasma cells they have a memory for a certain antigen, for a certain stimulant. And that's why when you get vaccinated and you are exposed to the infection, the body can produce a lot of antibodies very quickly because it's ready. And that's how you fight all different illnesses and different diseases. The galectin-3 prevents the B cells from maturing into plasma cells. So, and doing the work. And this is one of the very interesting results that I wasn't surprised because of the research, but it's kind of neat when you suddenly see it in labs, and it's not, I mean, again, it's not like very high level because it was 5 months after one single vaccine. So it's not like the next day, but addressing galectin-3 is key because it, just as you said, it allows other treatment. It allows the body to deal with its issue because we are exposing the inflammatory problematic things, the areas that are problematic in the body, that have inflammation. These areas are areas, Donna, that we don't get oxygen to, that we have this lattice formation, this biofilm, that we have what we call microenvironment, right? And this is really turns to the whole metabolic issue. If you look at metabolism and you look at sugars, okay? So if we have a normal sugar metabolism, we don't eat refined sugars, we keep a good diet, we are balanced, then we have normal density, we have insulin receptors, something called the adenosine monophosphate, AMPK, is stimulated in the cell, and we have normal sugar metabolism. Mitochondria is open, an enzyme called PDH, and we have a very efficient production of energy. 1 molecule of glucose, 36 molecules of ATP. Now we are in crisis. We're in crisis. We're in a survival mode. Survival mode that will drive diabetes, will drive infections like Candida because you're interested. Survival mode that will drive autoimmune diseases. Same survival mode that will drive cancer. AMPK get blocked. Either if it's cancer, it's because certain, I don't want to give the name, like P53, AKT, certain biochemical pathways in the cell. So this is my thinking. I have a very broad, esoteric, meditative approach, but then I take it to the biochemistry. That's the beauty of this approach. Then suddenly something called mTOR1 gets stimulated. The cell has a sense it doesn't have enough oxygen, hypoxia, which is classical of survival. No, we don't breathe, right? And then it blocks the mitochondria and we go into glycolysis. We can produce energy 100 times faster, what we need in survival, but at a heavy cost. Inflammation, acidosis, abnormal metabolism. And what happened in this sense? Candida will and thrive and grow. And so it's about balancing. So we can see in patients and people with infectious diseases, chronic infectious diseases, we see this mTOR pathway not working well. So this is where modified cytospectin helps. And then intracellularly, we use something called Honokiol, which is made from the magnolia bark, which helps inside the cell. And we have actually published a paper on their synergistic anti-inflammatory effect. So it's really between moving from a survival mode, like you said in the beginning, to a place of balance, of an open heart, of kindness. And why is this something that I already said we are built to do? Because we are built to do. If you look at every organ in the body, if you look at every cell in the body wants to get nourishment, right? So the cell is the smallest organism in our body. I mean, you can say the mitochondria also because it has boundaries. It has boundaries. It decides what comes in and what goes out, just like our skin, right? So the cell takes what it wants and lets go what he considered to be toxic. And every organ does it. The only organ in the body that functions differently, that say, give me all the suffering, give me all the toxicity from everywhere without discrimination. I need it, is the heart. The heart gets all the dirty blood from everywhere. It connects with the universe through the breath, and it gives blood everywhere without discrimination. And that's a transformative quality of the heart and the healing power of open heart medicine. That's the real deep message of the book.
I know it's a very powerful, strong spiritual message, which I definitely want to bring up. Actually, I'd like to come back to that because I think it's hard for people to understand what you mean by open heart medicine. A lot of people can't even begin to imagine that their heart can be open. It's so shut down. And so I know you have techniques that you use in your center and your meditation retreats and all, that you teach people how to open their hearts. And that's a really critical part of the healing, to be able to heal, right?
Yeah, it's my third wheel. So I do a lot of it in Israel, where I have thousands of students. And now with the book, I'm going to do it in the United States. I'm going to have like a, a master class webinar, and I'm actually going to have a doctor summit about transforming the survival paradox in November of 2022. And but if we look at the heart, which the first organ that the heart nourishes, when the blood comes out of the heart nourishes itself through the coronary arteries. But the heart doesn't nourish itself until it finishes its work, until it pumps the blood out. That's the selflessness of the heart, and the heart nourishing itself in order to nourish others and as part of nourishing others. So the easiest way to really feel it, I'm going to tilt a little bit this, is for everybody listening, just put your hands on your chest and relax your abdomen. And so put one hand on each side and just relax. It can be with eyes closed or open, and just feel the heat. Sometimes it's the first time, wow, you feel the heat of the heart. It's amazing. And just let this heat go everywhere. So the electromagnetic field of the heart is so big that it reaches every cell in our body at every moment. It's 100 times bigger than the electromagnetic field of the brain. And it connects to people around us. That's a heart-to-heart connection. So you can just feel this warmth of the heart melting any struggle, any survival. So that's the real medicine. But what is the one thing that makes the heart harden? Fibrotic type heart failure, galectin-3. So you can see why? Because it creates isolation instead of creating connectivity. So that's a small exercise. So because I've taken a lot of esoteric practices and some insight that I had, and I was fortunate, I was a doctor to some of the most legendary meditation masters in the Himalayas. I'm defining the area geographically for political reasons, so I can go back. So I was their personal doctor, and I got to study with them, at 15,000 feet. So I've gotten very unique knowledge that I kind of practice by myself for many, many years. I don't rush. I know I want to feel that there is, I study vertically. That's why it took such a long time. And the book.
Well, so you're basically saying that true healing requires that you open up your heart. You can't really fully heal without doing that.
But our heart does this transformation even if we're not aware, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be alive. The survival of the heart is to give. The moment the heart stops pumping, it stops its survival, we die. So because physiologically we have it, it's very easy to connect with it spiritually, mentally. And that's why meditation that involves the heart and this exchange of toxicity with love, compassion. It's the basic meditation is called Tonglen, but I've developed it to its physiological aspect. Really, there are great meditators. I'm not needed to teach meditation, but my niche, my specialty is how to use this somatically to transform our health and the health of others. Because that's where we go back to the microbiome, right? What is the microbiome? I know that people say 50 trillion, 100 trillion creatures, most of the DNA in our body. We have a relationship with the microbiome. If we treat the microbiome well, it will support us. When somebody takes a chemotherapy called adriamycin, which is very popular chemotherapy for many cancers, and they've taken antibiotics before the chemotherapy is not going to work because we need the microbiome to activate the chemotherapy. How did the microbiome know to do it? Immunotherapies for cancer are directly related to the health of the microbiome. The microbiome knows to protect us because when the microbiome protects us, it protects itself. It can survive for longer, That's the good part of it. You really want to know what survival is? It's about harmony with each other. It's about opening the heart to each other. It's about melting enemies. Like I say, when the survival paradox melts away, we connect with love, compassion, nourishment, and this door to infinite healing opens. And one of my most favorite sayings, Donna, is not everybody is going to be a miracle, but anyone can be a miracle. And why? Because everything changes all the time. Nothing stays the same. That's the one truth that transcends any belief system or thinking. Everything changes all the time. What happens when we don't accept change and we want to fixate on it? That's survival, not letting go, right? Not realizing that what comes and gets expressed will die and fade away. So that's really the root of survival. I'm touching it at the end of the book, and that's the topic of my next book, and that's what I teach in meditation, of course.
Yeah, that is beautifully explained in the book. But just to summarize, or say, not really a summary, but I just wanted to clarify, I guess, and have you confirm it, that anything that's stressful, a thought, anything really, somebody yelling at us, a bad relationship, there's so many things that trigger that stress survival response. Then our cortisol goes up, our blood sugar goes up, we become more acidic. And then at that stage, you can't access the heart. It's the last thing on your mind is calming down, listening to your heart, feeling its vibration and all. So are you just saying something like a habit or a technique that people just have to, know, like, I'm feeling really stressed right now. I need to get out of this state. So I'm going to meditate and do what Isaac says to do in the book. I'm going to start practicing this meditation technique, and I'm going to bring myself back down into a healthy state. Is that a summary of it, sort of?
Yeah. So actually, the last chapter in the book, I introduced the very basic meditation, but it's true. So when we are stressed, we are in our head. For example, when I talk to you, I think, and the words come, and I process everything from my heart. I do not process any longer I think from my heart, literally. I feel the thinking here. I don't feel the thinking here. And you can see when people are in their head, you can see they're in their head, When they are in their heart, everything is opened. There's a true quality of healing. And the beauty, we are built to do this. It doesn't take decades and many hours. It's built into us physiologically. We just have to tune in. And that's really, it's very interesting. Some of maybe some of my two greatest meditation teachers, which were also my patients, really legendary in the Himalayas. And they somehow told me, this is going to be your work in the West, to spread the connection with the heart in simple way, and not in an esoteric way. And really, this was decades ago. And I really said, well, I don't know. But if they say, maybe, and now it's maturing because there is a deep message. When we connect with our heart, everything is possible. And there's so much research on the healing quality of compassion and love and being kind to each other. And we are really challenged these days. We are challenged with polarities of opinions. And as we all know, and it's really about understanding somebody who has a different point of view. It's about having the flexibility. So, for example, in medicine, conventional doctors, can they embrace holistic medicine? But can a holistic doctor embrace conventional medicine? It's the same, So it's about having a certain flexibility of mind. And it happens when we connect to our heart, because one of the most beautiful saying about the heart is the heart has no concept. The heart just connects with the universe and gives. It's our head, it's our traumas. And that's where genetics and epigenetics play such an important role. And I tell some stories in the book about people who actually healed from amazing PTSD, amazing traumas, and it's possible when we let go, And so the one chapter before the last, chapter 15, is healing our scars of survival. And so we do it physically in the clinic, the Amitabha clinic, by actually injecting the scars with procaine, with an anesthetic.
Mm-hmm. And scars, you're saying the scars on the body.
Scars on the body. Now, what's amazing when you inject the scar, and it's called neural therapy, it's not my invention, and we use some homeopathics, but even just using procaine, It's an anesthetic, Donna, that works for 45 minutes.
The
And
scar just
in
dissolves.
all patients, 100%, I've never seen a case not. I've done hundreds, if not thousands. The scar will get smaller, either 10% or 50, 60%. This can be a scar that has been there 20, 30, 40 years. And guess what? It will never come back. How is this possible? Because the scar is holding to a certain pattern from the nervous system, a certain trauma, a certain thing that served the scar. The scar had to, let's say, to be created after surgery. It was, otherwise it would be in trouble. But now it's not needed anymore. But it doesn't know. It shoots to the brain. We numb it. The connection between the brain and the scar falls away, and the scar forgets, and the brain forgets. It's really we are really relearning and repatterning our memory reconsolidation. It's profound. And in the book, in the same chapter, I tell my story as a Holocaust survivor, what happened to my grandmother and to my grandfather that I'm named after, and what happened to me. And now when I healed the Holocaust trauma I was holding for my family, my mother in her early 80s, for the first time in her life, without knowing I'm doing it, could open TV and watch programs about the Holocaust you could never see, because I did my healing, and time goes in all directions, So I have this philosophical, esoteric concept that I teach in retreats, but I translate them into biochemistry, into medicine. There's a great level of practicality. I'm a practical guy. I'm a researcher. I'm published. I got NIH grants. It's this combination. It's every day.
Well, so the Holocaust, you weren't there, but the energetics of it was in the cells. It's for your mother, for example, and passed down to you. So are you saying that you sort of stopped that by literally opening your heart? Was it how did you do that? Was it like a forgiveness?
So
how did you get, there's so many people still there,
Yeah, I'm named after my grandfather, Isaac, who died at age 50 in Israel after he escaped from the Holocaust. So he died, I think, in 52. When my grandmother, the real survivor, died in 98, in 2007 or whatever it was, and we stood at her grave, my mother for the first time said, your grandfather, she really knows the right number. She said 10 out of 12. It was 5 out of 8. 5 out of 8 siblings were killed by Hitler. We never knew it. We never talked about it. He never talked about it. He held it in his stomach. He died from stomach cancer at age 50. Mm-hmm. Since my childhood, I had this pressure in the center of my chest, this pain. And I kind of knew, and sensitivity in the upper back, and I knew it like it didn't belong to me, and I could never get rid of it. Okay? And then when I connected with the fact that and I knew I had some healing that was connected to him. And when I connected to this, and I realized that I'm holding his pain that was passed to me genetically and epigenetically, I use my meditation and my psychological awareness to let go of it. So you let go psychologically by understanding, but then you rest your mind. It's a meditation that does a trick. And suddenly, my God, I have no more pain in my chest. My chest is totally opened 55 years later. In late 50s, it happened, insane, And when it happened, suddenly my mother went through the transformation, and then I teach it. In the book, I don't give the diagram. I did share the diagram for the first time when I gave a webinar in IHS a few weeks ago, but it's going to be a big part of when I teach more. I show how time goes multidirectionally and how one thing affects others. So meditation and connecting with the heart has a multi-generational healing effect. I see it in patients, I see it in my own story, and science supports it, So there's a very famous saying in Hebrew that says, Akol tzafui v'harashut netuna, which means everything is predetermined, but we have the choice. Mm-hmm. The predetermination is genetic. The choice is epigenetic. So we all have a choice. Great. That's why anybody can be a miracle, because we have a choice to decide if a gene will express itself and will not express itself. And galectin 3 does play a role in epigenetics expression, But of course, what we are talking about today is bigger than just a supplement or a molecule. It's about life, It's about, and we all fall into survival. I fall into survival. You fall into, every living being falls into survival. But then we have the ability to snap out. We just have to know how to do it and remember. And that's real healing. That's really ultimate healing.
So there are really two messages in your book and here on our podcast. One is physically a really important message about the importance of this molecule, this protein, lectin-3, and controlling it, keeping it down very low. It's still got a purpose. So we need some in our body, but when it gets too high, it becomes very dangerous. And you can block that from damaging the cell with a modified citrus. It's pectisol.
Right.
That's the one you want to get to make sure it's the right one, because there are other ones out there. I wanted to tell people, first of all, I love this, and I noticed sometimes I would use it, and then I'd stop using it for a little while because I get real busy, forget about it, and then I go back to using it. And I just noticed certain things beginning, happening. Like, for example, I had some veins on the top of my foot that went up would go up my leg, up my ankle, and I noticed, gee, they don't seem to be there, or they're going away. And then I thought, could it be the modified citrus pectin doing that?
Definitely.
But because anyway, I want to be sure I didn't forget to take it. And, from what I could tell, I needed 3 scoops a day to get a really good dose. Mm-hmm. And, because I'm 75, a big issue for me, or a big goal for me, is to age well and not be a burden to my family.
When you're 75, it's mind-blowing.
Oh, thank you. But I've been since like a kid really thinking, are we supposed to age like this? Is there a way to, do we have to be in a wheelchair where people are pushing us around and our hair is real white and you can see through our hair and lots of spots all over us? And I thought, if there is another way, God, please show me. So I've been looking for answers. I really think this is an important part of aging well. And what I do is I put 3 scoops into this ball jar of water. And then right now it looks darker than usual because I put in some of our our minerals, which are fulvic and humic minerals. But also I put in some camu powder because I wanted to add some vitamin C in a natural form. So it's usually lighter in color, but I added hacked it up a bit here. But
humic are so important because they also bind to glyphosate and they prevent absorption of glyphosate. So they're very important.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I actually have a ton of things I wanted to talk to you about. And that was one of them, all the toxins that it binds in the body, including glyphosate. Very important. If you listen to Stephanie Seneff's work, you realize glyphosate, she's connected glyphosate to everything there is, and autism and everything, but I think that's a bit much. But nevertheless, it's a dangerous poison. And just like we don't want heavy metals in our body, we don't want glyphosate. If something comes along that can actually keep the glyphosate or the heavy metals from harming us, we should all be taking it. I wanted to ask you too about the vaccines, because this is a big issue for people. Their children, they don't want to have their children vaccinated, a lot of people. So children can take this too, right?
Definitely.
Okay, so I was thinking, because I'm really interested in this whole issue with the long haulers, and also I sort of believe that what's going on is that the virus is still active and causing all this inflammation, but it's actually awakening up yeast, for example. There's actually research showing that yeast becomes a problem again, even if it wasn't before. It's sort of awakening viruses and all that.
Absolutely.
So it seems from everything I've been learning from you that once again, this would prevent someone becoming a long hauler, calm that inflammation down. And so as far as these sleepy latent viruses like Epstein-Barr and herpes, what about, can you say something about this for that?
Yeah, and of course, also medicinal mushrooms are sometimes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But if we focus on this, because that's the main topic today, so we have about, I think, 4 or 6 papers with the USDA publishing that our modified citrus pectin is a proven prebiotic. It helps normal bacteria to grow in the gut, and it will prevent the growth of abnormal bacteria. So yes, it's all about maintaining the harmony. So this will help you to maintain a normal microbiome. And as a result, it will help with different infection. You know, for example, the Lyme patients, they love pectosol because they are so sensitive in their gut, and the vast majority will feel better. It's rare for them to take a binder because it's a great binder, of course, and feel better. You know, usually you will take a binder, you feel worse. Not with pectosol because we are reducing this abnormal inflammaging, you know. It's really, I mean, there is inflammation, there's inflammaging, which is a very interesting term. It's this subclinical inflammation that you may not see in blood tests, but it's really aging us. And galectin-3 plays a key role in inflammation.
You do toward the end mention some very important products that you have developed. I guess should have said this in the beginning, besides being truly a healer, which I think people can see that very clearly now. You're also a researcher, that's clear, but also a product developer of great products. The mushrooms, as you mentioned, and the Honokiol. I never know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Honokiol.
Is it Honokiol? Can you just talk about Honokiol too? Because you said they were complementary.
Honokiol is this amazing molecule that is a phenol that is in the bark of magnolia, and it has a wisdom to work differently in a normal cell compared to a cancer cell. In a normal cell, it's a powerful antioxidant. In a pathological cell, in a cancer cell, it will help to kill the cell. It will also help to normalize the metabolism. So Honokiol is very good for diabetes. It's very good for every kind of infection. And there's so much research on Honokiol and infections, but it has an intracellular effect, and because of its unique metabolic effects, you see studies, it's synergistic literally, for example, in cancer, with every kind of cancer treatment. Now, what it does, which is very interesting in the brain, it converts glutamate, which is an excitatory toxic compound, into GABA. So it has a very good...
Oh, that's why it's so good for sleep.
It's very relaxing. In fact, Honokiol is not as sexy as cannabis and cannabinoids, but it's actually more powerful, in my opinion, and very safe. So it's very good for anxiety. It's very good for neuroinflammation, a lot of study in neuroinflammation. So you can imagine that blocking galectin-3 is important for neuroinflammation. If you look at the Alzheimer, and you can see, Donna, I apologize, there's so much to talk about, but if you look at the Alzheimer plaque, there is 20-fold concentration of galectin-3 in the Alzheimer plaque compared to normal tissue in the brain. So, of course, using MCP, there are studies that we show that when MCP is used and we stimulate neuroinflammation by using a molecule called LPS, lipopolysaccharide, our modified cytopectin will cut it down. But then when you use it with Honokiol, you will get a synergistic effect. That's why it's a very good combination to use the modified cytopectin with Honokiol.
Well, I've heard, so lipopolysaccharide are the, that's the toxic bacteria. They produce lipopolysaccharide. And I remember reading that the pectosol actually, let's see, it's that the LPS actually brings the galectin molecules to these areas to damage it. Is that right? Did I get it right?
Yeah, you got it right. Exactly. And galectin-3 will bring the LPS to the... Galectin-3 is like the bus driver. It brings the bad guys to wherever they need to do. And so amazing studies showing that, for example, if you produce damage in the kidneys, it will excrete galectin-3 that will then bring macrophage to the heart to cause heart damage. But if you use animals that cannot produce galectin-3, there's no damage. But if you give them bone marrow that can produce galectin-3 and you damage the kidneys, the message of the injury, okay, the stress, the survival, will go to the bone marrow. The bone marrow will excrete galectin-3 that now will travel to the heart and cause the heart damage. So neuroinflammation is the same. And, and from the gut nerve, central nervous, and the connection between the brain and the gut, you and I are not surprised about it. And this is why, Honokiol and the modified cytopectin are a very good combination, definitely.
Just last night I was listening to a podcast, actually a piece of a web summit. The doctor, very, very good doctor, very famous in cancer, helping people with cancer, she's the topic of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease came up. And she said, well, there's no cure for that. And I had heard on the podcast that functional medicine podcast that I was talking about in the beginning, you had said, this is the cure for functional fatty liver disease
also
too.
Research, and there's already a phase 3 drug, galectin-3 blocker, similar to what we have, but they had some issues, regulatory issue. Yes, non-alcoholic NASH, steatorrhea, which is a huge problem that people are not aware of. It's bigger than hepatitis C. I mean, like 100 million United States have some kind of effect with this. Or NLFDS, the more mild one. Yeah, it's driven by galectin-3. So galectin-3 blockers play a very important role, and there's a lot of interest now in the scientific community on and looking at the role of galectin-3 in NASH, non-alcoholics, hepatitis.
Okay, because I never heard that before. I think that's really important to get out there. So in the heart, in the kidney, which is interesting because you didn't mention that heart-kidney connection in Chinese medicine, which I was surprised given that you're also an acupuncturist. But in the heart, in the kidney, and in the liver, in these young men that are getting myocarditis, for example, after being vaccinated, all of those are examples of fibrosis, right? That hardening fibrosis.
Of inappropriate immune response, where galectin-3 plays a big role. So, of course, taking MCP, these are times to take MCP at a full dose. If there were times to do it, that's the times. Now, if somebody is healthy, they can take just 1 scoop a day, and they're young, in their 30s and 40s. But studies are showing, if you look at centenarians and you look at people 70 to 80, and some of the 70 to 80 are going to make it to be centenarians, right? The centenarians have a lower level of galectin-3 than the ones who are 70 or 80. And galectin-3 goes up.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely. So a lot.
And why do you think that is? They just genetically can control galectin-3 better,
yes,
or?
Yes, also genetically, and also they have a more efficient repair system. They have a more efficient.
The DNA repairs itself, and maybe also these are the people that are thinking with their heart, as you said. I've really got, the book made me do a lot of thinking, actually, a lot of reflecting. And when you said that about thinking with the heart, I thought, well, I have 2 kids. Actually, I have 3, but the other one was born.
Wait. You see, a moment ago, when you say when I was thinking, you were thinking, so because I can see it, I'm trained. For you dropped into your heart. Could you feel it? There was one moment where you dropped into your heart. And you
no, I didn't. I got to learn that. That is not that easy.
So the job of a good meditation teacher. I mean, now meditation like mindfulness is very important. But mindfulness is like very important first grade meditation, because mindfulness means you have to be mindful of something. And when you connect with your heart, everything is free. You have to let go of everything. So you had this fraction, like if we were sitting separately in a room, Donna, go back to this moment, and then that's where the meditation shifts. That's where you get this connection. That's when.
Well, maybe that happened when I was thinking of my kids. I had 2, and then I had 15 years, and then had the last one. But they're so different, because one is definitely thinks with his head. He's real analytical. He's got to study everything and think about it and everything. The other one, my daughter, if I wanted to talk to them and reach them and get them to do something, I realized I have to talk to her heart, but to him, I have to talk to the logic. And, when you said that, I thought, gosh, how do you get somebody like that into their heart? Because, his mind is just the dominant thing.
I will give you an advice.
Okay.
The person who really transformed my book and helped me and wrote it is my daughter, who is ordained Buddhist Lama of the highest. She's very quiet. She doesn't want to teach in public, but she will be amazing and she will use your diet. She will be amazing for a podcast to talk about this, because when you were talking to me, I could see how you're able to shift for each of the children. But Lihi, Lama Chuni, she's really a master in it. And I think it's a great podcast for both of you to talk about it. And
because you said it
a lot with younger people, and she guides them through their struggles,
Wow, that's fantastic. So I think that's another important place for us to take up next. I'd love to talk to her because I think that I understand exactly what you said, but I think a lot of people listening to this will say, okay, but I'm not so sure I can get out of my head, especially when I'm angry. There's so much anger in the world right now. How can we get into our heart right now? So she has
Yeah.
great techniques.
Oh,
That's a
yeah,
perfect thing.
she's really, yeah. And it's really about, we have to know that's the beauty of human beings. We can get lost in our negative thoughts, but we can, at the same time, a second later, connect with our heart. And every second we connect with our heart, it accumulates, it accumulates, it accumulates, it accumulates. And
Is
slowly,
it by going, like, if you can stop yourself and say, I have so much to be grateful for, and then is it out of
it is
gratitude that you
helpful.
connect with your heart?
Being grateful is very profound. It changes our biochemistry, yes. But it's really about, it really requires instructions. It's really, I will be starting to teach. I will be doing, I think in May, I will do like a 1 week. So my vision, like for my summits, there are going to be different well-known people in the level of detoxification, physically, transformation, meditation, and healing. But during the 7 days or whatever, I will be giving a daily meditation practice. So it won't be like a summit, people just listening. People will go through a healing experience as they listen. So then you can actually
That's
feel
really
it.
what we need right now. We need pectisol for sure. Obviously, as you made that really clear, and we need that for sure. But you're right. We need the other part too. And how to do it is going to take some training. It's not natural, and it doesn't come easy to a lot of us, I guess. But you make that real, clear in the book how important that is for healing. So I hope people are getting that. I have this book because you sent it to me with this beautiful, just what you said is just beautiful. I wanted to read it. It says, Dear Donna, when the survival paradox melts away, what is left is harmony, healing, mutual interdependence, and love for all. So I thought, what a beautiful thing to say to myself all the time, too. So thank you for that. And I also got the book on Kindle because sometimes I like to read it on Kindle.
Yeah, this is it. This is really the essence of all of it. Is it exactly? Yeah.
Thank you. It's really special. And I bought it, so I have it on Kindle, but it's not on Audible, and I like to be read to a lot of times. Are you going to bring it out?
I'm going to bring it out to Audible. It did very well in Amazon. I really encourage people to buy the Survival Paradox. You can go to survivalparadox.com, go to dreliaz.org. The book, I'm surprised, and a lot of thought leaders, a lot of doctors, people in the health field for decades, and I get the same reaction. Isaac, it changed my way of thinking, it changed the way I look at medicine. Or some people say, it's kind of ahead of its time, a little bit. But I think we are ready for this message. I think the world needs this message.
And there's a lot of great people who've endorsed the book, and in their own way, you can see they're just awed and they have the deepest respect for you and for the message. So it's an important message that needs to get out. I hope that people will take the parts from this podcast that's most important for them right now. Maybe it's the survival, it's the modified citrus pectin, and they start there, but not to stop there and go on and stay connected with Dr. Isaac Eliaz. And so the website you want him to go to is?
Yeah, for the books, they can go to survivalparadox.com, and they can also visit dreliaz, eliaz.com. There's a lot of good information. But survivalparadox.com is a good place to learn specifically about the book. And Amitabha Clinic, Amitabha means limitless light.
Oh, I wanted to ask you that. So, so would you spell it? And it means limitless life. Yeah. That's great.
Amitabha, Amitabha. Amitabha is one, amitabhaclinic.com, where we do very unique work. I do a lot of work with therapeutic apheresis, with blood filtration. And so, yes, there are different levels to my activity. But I think one thing that you can feel from the podcast is whatever I do, it comes from my heart,
That's very easy to see. Thank you so much. I didn't realize how special this was going to be, and
Well, you have no idea how special it is for me. My God, I mean, the body ecology is just, it's a mainstay in our life. So thank you for your
oh,
contribution.
thank you.
And
It's
I'm
funny
looking
how you
forward.
never realize that you're touching other people's lives a lot of times, and you're going to touch many people's lives. I'm going to do everything I can to get people to know about this book, and I'm going to ask everybody else to please do the same thing. Please share this information. This is the time where everybody needs to be on Pectisol. So,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Eliaz, thank you very much.